to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True, and today Mountain Gazette's Kyle Frost has returned from his journey to Blister Summit. You can, of course, head to the link in the show notes to sign up for Kyle's newsletter, and he's here regularly, usually on Friday, to expound on what he's been writing about. Welcome back, Kyle. We missed you last week.
Yeah, good to be back, but, I was having a good time in Crested Butte, so not that sad.
Yeah, how was Blister Summit?
It was nice. Despite living in Colorado for 8 or 9 years now, I've never actually skied Crested Butte. So been there a bunch in the summer to mountain bike, and even once in the winter just to visit a friend, but never actually got in the mountain. So that was super fun.
Sounds like you kind of hit it at the right time too, right? There was a pretty good base, and then it snowed while you were there, right?
Yeah, it was pretty good base. First day or two was, a little weak, and then we got some good snow the next 2 days that kind of softened things up a little bit. So kind of all conditions. So
I've been pinging Ellsworth. I want to have him on eventually to talk some ski stuff, to have a little more ski content. And he's definitely one of the guys you want to talk to. But I'm definitely curious about the event, because there's been some news and sort of the industry and community events in the last couple of weeks. Outside Festival announced their lineup, so I guess our prediction that it's going to happen looks like it's going to happen, because they've booked some decent music acts there. Sea Otter's coming up. There's a bunch of trade organizations having their events this summer. So a sort of this kind of event, I'm very curious about, how it's going and what it could mean for the future of gatherings, kind of in the outdoor community.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about Blister, at least, I can't really speak to whether the event is a, financial success for Blister. But from my perspective, coming in as an industry person that's mostly there, Mountain Gazette doesn't write about gear. So I'm mostly there to mingle and talk to people and see what's going on. Rode the chairlift with a lot of people that were there as Blister readers or, Blister Plus subscribers and all that kind of thing from all over the country. I think there's one guy from Switzerland who came in. It is cool to get the blend of act like real consumers that are there to just test skis that they wouldn't have an opportunity to test otherwise, and also get to mingle and ski with Cody and Elise and Drew Peterson and all the Hoji, they're all just out there on the mountain during the day at various points. So, that's very cool. Long term, I have no idea if this model works, but coming from the experience of one event, I had a great time and it seemed great.
We do have one topic to talk about from last week while you were gone. You wrote about blue zones, or your skepticism around blue zones. So blue zones, for anyone listening who doesn't know, are these areas around the planet, I think there's 5 of them, where residents have shown an affinity for living a long time, deep into old age, mostly due to their diet and lifestyle choices. That's kind of the most basic way of putting it. And in your column, you kind of start presenting the case that this may mostly be bullshit. So before we get into some of those reasons, what made you even want to dig into the topic? Because I think I immediately responded to you like, oh, I can't wait to hear about some of the emails you get on this topic, which then in your mailbag today, clearly you got a few about this one. So, but what was it initially that attracted you to the topic?
I've been, vaguely familiar with the concept for a while. I spent a lot of time in the travel industry, and, there was a new Netflix show that came out. And
yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, and I'd also been roughly familiar with some of the criticisms of the whole package for a while. And basically the criticisms come down to that there's a possibility that the initial research is just based on flawed demographic data, where in places like Okinawa and Sardinia, there's a good chance that at least some of these really old people aren't actually that old, because research shows that when birth certificates are introduced, centenarians and super centenarians go down. Surprise, surprise. And there's also quite a bit of pension fraud, as particularly in Japan, where a couple years ago they found that something like 200,000 people that they thought were over 100 years old, they just couldn't find them. Uh,
And there's nephew like Bill, like, no, I don't know. This check just shows up every month. I don't
yeah,
know.
exactly. Collecting pension checks. The thing that kicked it off in Japan was they went to award the who they thought was the oldest person in Tokyo with some kind of award. He was like 111 or something like that, and found that he'd been dead for 30 years.
This is like the Little League World Series, when like the kids like throwing 100 miles per hour. It's like, oh yeah, it turns out he was 16. He should have been playing.
Yeah, and even when you kind of like get out of the pure research aspect and you look at how they built this like Blue Zones diet or Blue Zones lifestyle, like you took 5 very different places in the world and found
Yeah,
commonalities. And so now you're like, oh, if you eat beans and drink a moderate amount of wine and get exercise, then you're going to live to 100 or like, but their response to it is that they did do additional like fact checking on people's ages and that kind of stuff. And they also clarified that the qualification for a blue zone is not necessarily having a high number
right.
of centenarians. It's just like living longer and that kind of thing. I don't know. At the end of the day, like it's one of those things that they've effectively productized this idea of blue zones, which at its core is just live a healthy lifestyle. Like, oh, surprise. Like if you do things in moderation and like have low stress life and spend time outdoors and have a strong community, people tend to be healthy and live longer.
It's a
Like,
good point
surprise.
because I watched the doc, and I had on Netflix, and I definitely had been kind of familiar with it and everything. And the main guy in all this is what Dan, is it Butner? Is that how you pronounce his last name? He's sort of he's
Yeah, I
a
don't
former
know.
cyclist who's kind of gone on this lifelong crusade about finding out like why people live longer or live healthier or whatever. And the packaging of it does feel a little convenient, like when you're watching it, because it's they think they do a pretty good job of sort of like trying to like line up how these people are living with what's recommended and all that kind of stuff. But it's pretty basic stuff. Now, I enjoyed the doc because it was fun to hear about some of the individuals they profiled, right? These kind of guys in Central America and in Asia and everything who have lived kind of incredible lives and are incredibly fit. And presumably, if their age is accurate, to your point, maybe we don't really know, but let's say they are. Like, it's impressive, and it's cool. It's cool to see that. But then now you're talking about individuals versus a community or a lot of people. So, I mean, do you think there's ulterior motives at play, like from a guy like Dan Butter? Do you think that they're sort of trying to capitalize
I
off
mean,
of it, or?
I don't think that there's really ulterior motives. I mean, Blue Zones is a trademarked term now. Like Blue Zones is a company like that sells Blue Zones cookbooks
Yeah,
and
I
Blue
probably own one at
Zones.
this point. I like buying cookbooks.
Yeah, and I think that they consult directly with like other municipalities about like how to make your area a blue zone. So I assume they get paid for that. So I mean, they have a
Yeah,
vested interest in pushing the package, the branded package of blue zones, and not just like, hey, live
right.
healthy lifestyles. Like, no, you live a blue zones lifestyle. I don't think that there's like a real negative ulterior motive here. Like we're trying to get people to live healthier lives. Like that's a commendable goal. But I think it speaks to the ways in which consumers just like things tied up with nice little bows. We like little packages that tell us how to live. You're a you're not just going to eat in moderation. You're going to be a keto person. You're going to be a vegetarian. You're going to be whatever the paleo. Like people like little bubbles that tell them exactly how to live their lives. And when you can wrap it all up and be like, this is the blue zones is the recipe for living to 100, then that is very easy for people to digest versus do healthier things.
That's kind of almost what I'm asking. I don't think that they're, twisting their mustaches and saying like, we're going to mislead everybody or anything like that. But it is when you do understand, and you kind of, and everybody should understand at this point, just kind of how dogmatic we are and how we want to be led that way and want to be absolved of everything or just be told what to do. Like, what is the harm of kind of creating that sort of healthy lifestyle-esque religion, right? I mean, because I hate calling it a religion, but it is a little of like, well, if somebody sees this and makes good changes, that's not a terrible thing. At the same time, if they read your article, they might be like, oh, I can't do that. That sounds terrible.
I don't know. It's really hard to say because like you want good outcomes and you want people to be healthy, but like if you flip it around and say, if something has a bad outcome, if you use the same formula
right.
and there's a bad outcome, then it's bad, right? So it's like, are you arguing for people to think for themselves and have common sense and develop science and rigorously based solutions and that kind of stuff? Or are you like, it's okay to trick people as long as the outcome is something that I want?
Well, that they want, Kyle. That they want.
I'm not saying they're tricking people. I'm not like, that's the wrong wording for this particular.
I know what you're saying,
thing.
though. No, that's kind of what I'm digging into here too, right? The whole thing is fascinating because then there is, there is kind of the success story they present about Albert Lea, Minnesota, right? And they detail that in the doc where they move into this town of Minnesota, which I find kind of interesting because like one thing's about seems to be universal around the established blue zones that have naturally occurred is kind of a more temperate, warm weather climate. But like, we're going to go to Minnesota. Don't worry about it, But whatever. They go to Minnesota. It's probably because it's the only town that said, sure, come do this here. And again, they're the only sources that I've heard about this from. So maybe you know more, but seems to have had positive impacts on that society of establishing, programs that, show healthy eating habits, making sure people are being more physically. I mean, but it is, to your point, it's all the stuff
like,
that
it doesn't have to be blue zone.
It does not.
Like, build more bike paths. Crazy. Like, wow, people biked more.
But is that our shortcoming as like people that we won't just do that because it's the right thing to do, that we need to have the sort of organized preacher up there going, yeah, man, this is what we're going to do,
I mean, I think it's a great flaw. I mean, not a flaw. It's just part of people.
Oh, I think it's a flaw.
Just who people are. They like, they like being part of things and they like things that are easy to digest. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But, I mean, I don't know. One of the funny things that I posted at the end of the article, it's a great quotable. It's like, it sounds good. It's nice and packaged. But like when you really look at the whole picture data,
yeah,
like you could basically adopt move to any other country other than the United States and live like a person there and live several years longer on average.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, number one, gun violence. Let's just take that out of the equation. Right?
Oh, yeah. But like,
number two,
just like regular life expectancy.
Yeah, right.
U.S. is significantly lower than comparable countries.
Yeah, and heading in the wrong direction too. We're not catching up. We're pulling away. Well, what's the reader feedback been for I mentioned at the beginning that you had one in your mailbag this week. Any other emails about it?
No, I mean, I had most of it was pretty positive, just based on like, oh, this is like an interesting thing to think about. I did have one guy that shared with me that rebuttal by blue zones that I hadn't come across in my research, and I got some feedback that felt like it was a little bit. Kind of what we were talking about, like, you're poking at something that has a positive outcome. Like, what's the point? Which, I mean, I think is a fair criticism, but also, like, I don't know. Like, I'm going to poke the bear sometimes. I'm not going to shy away from poking at things because I agree with the overarching goal or things like that. I think that the devil's in the details, and there's a lot of nuance. And I don't know. I wrote a piece a little while ago when Yvon Chouinard donated the company
to the environment. Right? So he donated Patagonia to the environment.
Yeah, which nothing to really criticize about that. Like, Patagonia does the best work in the industry on environmentalism and the environment and climate change and all that kind of stuff, but the loophole that he used is a tax loophole that the Hobby Lobby, I think it was one of the Hobby Lobby guys used like just a couple years ago to do the exact same thing for conservative causes.
Right.
And so it's a similar thing where it's like you can be excited that Chenard did that, but do we treat the billionaires differently because they're the ones that we agree with? Or do we say, hey, that this loophole shouldn't exist at all? At the end of the day, it's just a tax loophole, basically. And it's amazing that it's being used for positive things. And there's stuff to like dig into about that, about what the control actually looks like. And it's in a trust that's still kind of controlled by his family and yada, yada, yada.
Someone's still making money, folks.
Yeah, some people are making money. People still have control, but we can't rely on people always being altruistic,
Totally.
obviously. And we can't get mad at the Hobby Lobby guy and be excited about Chenard without looking at the core issue.
Totally. I think that's a great microcosm of a lot of the issues in the country. And if we're going even bigger now, coming from the Blue Zone thing to a kind of a bigger kind of state of the union, right? Because it is, we're real quick to like, pat ourselves on the back if it suits our needs. And maybe that's kind of what you're getting to even in the Blue Zones thing too, right? It's sort of like, how something is packaged should be as important as what's in the package. All right, man, we can wrap it up there. I definitely recommend, though, that I think the doc's worth watching. I think I never felt like walking away from any of these that like my life has changed. I kind of saw it as almost anything else. If you watch a food documentary or read a good article, like there's definitely things you're like, oh, that's interesting, or that can integrate well into my lifestyle. But there is a little like, of course, forehead, hand to your forehead, like, oh, so I should move around a lot and eat mostly plants and it's going to work out for me. Like that is kind of the key takeaway of the whole thing. And it does kind of feel like it's being evangelized a little bit for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that.
All right, man. Well, we can wrap it up there. So before you turn off the rock fight, click the link in the show notes, subscribe to Kyle, make sure you get all of his newsletters. Also, you can subscribe to Mountain Gazette from a link in the show notes. And click the follow button wherever you're listening to the rock fight to subscribe. And also drop us a 5-star review. That's super helpful when you do that. We are a production of Rock Fight LLC. For Kyle Frost, I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out and take us home is Krista Makes with the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock fight.